What is going on, everyone? It's Nico here, and I've got a very fun video for you guys today because I am going to be filling out my March Madness bracket. It's that time of the year. It's one of my favorite times of the year, and we're just going to get right into it because I'm too excited not to. This thing is going to be perfect, and when I say perfect, I mean hopefully perfect for the first 3 or so hours of the tournament. That would be a step up from last year for me, but nonetheless, let's get into this thing. We've got the number 1 overall seed, Auburn Tigers, and I'm not going to do anything crazy here. I'm going to pick all the 1 seeds to beat the 16 seeds. I'll also take Duke in the East, but we'll get to that later. Then we've got Louisville versus Creighton. This is a good 8-9 matchup. 2 teams that I think could probably play above this seed level. But because the game is in Lexington, I'm going to use that as the bit of a tiebreaker here in what is always a coin flip matchup. You know, the 8-9s can really go either way. I'm going to take Louisville. I think they maybe didn't deserve an 8 seed given how great their record was, even though they were playing in the ACC. Then we get into a really interesting matchup between Michigan and UC San Diego. UC San Diego is like everyone's favorite mid-major. They have amazing numbers. They have an amazing record. And Michigan was definitely shaky in the regular season. They have a turnover problem, that's for sure, but they did win the Big Ten tournament. So it's kind of not a certainty as to which version of this Michigan team we're going to get. But what I will say is usually when these upsets don't go down, even though it's a really good mid-major team involved, it's because the other team has a lot of size. The higher seed can just sort of overwhelm them with that. And I think Michigan definitely has a big-time size and athleticism mismatch with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. And, you know, I'm just going to take Michigan here. I don't think I see the upset happening, even though UC San Diego seems to be a great team. We're going to take Michigan. And then we get to my Texas A&M Aggies. They've got the Yale Bulldogs in the first round. I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't a little bit concerned about this because Yale upset Auburn last year as a 13 seed. They still have their best player, John Poulakaitis. He's just very, very deadly as a shooter. And this Texas A&M team, if I'm being completely honest, is not one that you should trust because their offense is very inconsistent. They're not good at shooting free throws. You know, their defense can be vulnerable against good three-point shooting teams, but I'm not going to pick against my own school in the first round. Come on now. We've got to take the Aggies, A&M over Yale. And then we get to Ole Miss versus the first 4 game between San Diego State and UNC. I was very surprised to see UNC make the tournament considering just how many games they lost against tournament teams. They had so many opportunities to prove themselves and they just didn't. But I am happy for RJ Davis that he gets his opportunity. Ultimately, though, I just don't think that UNC or San Diego State are that great of teams. We're going to take Ole Miss. Chris Beard will be ready. He is one of the better coaches in the country, that's for sure. So I'm taking Ole Miss. And then I'm going to take Iowa State over Lipscomb. Like, to be honest, guys, if I haven't watched and really like a mid-major, I'm just not going to pick the upset, especially when they're like a 14 seed or beyond. Then we've got Marquette versus the New Mexico Lobos, my hometown school. You guys know maybe that I was really high on New Mexico last year. I had them making the Final Four as an 11 seed, and that just turned out to be a devastatingly bad prediction. They got blown out by Clemson in the first round, and I've learned my lesson, all right? I'm not trusting these Mountain West teams. It's a different kind of level, and Marquette is not necessarily a bad 7 seed. They're just a really solid team. As much as I would love to see the Lobos pull this thing out, I think Donovan Dent is one of the very best players in the country. Marquette is just the better team here. New Mexico is just going to be a little bit outmatched, I think, so I'm going to take Marquette. And I'm going to take Michigan State over Bryant to round out that first round in the South. So now we get to the West region, and we're taking Florida. We're also going to take Houston in the Midwest while we're at it. And then Oklahoma versus UConn. We've got the defending champs here. And I was a little surprised that Oklahoma got in this safely. I'm going to take UConn, man. I'm not going to bet against them in the first round, even though they haven't had the best year. Memphis versus Colorado State is interesting because Colorado State has been playing really good basketball lately, and Memphis just has they're just screaming fraudulent all over them because they win so many close games in a bad conference, and you can never trust these Penny Hardaway teams. I just think I'm gonna. But the Mountain West. Oh, this is tough. This is tough. These are two teams that I don't really trust. Colorado State is actually favored, though, and they're actually the better team analytically, so I'm just going to trust the numbers, and I will take Colorado State, even though I really do not trust either of these teams. And, you know, I really liked Grand Canyon. I had my eyes on them. They were really going to be one of my favorite sleeper mid-major teams, just because they won a game in my bracket last year. I had them over St. Mary's. They still have Tyron Grant Foster on their team. They're an athletic group, but Maryland is so dang good, man. They really have an amazing starting five. Like Derek Queen is just one of the very best players in the country, going to be a high draft pick. So I'm going to take Maryland. I just think this is a really unfortunate matchup for Grand Canyon. But I'll tell you what, I definitely think that Drake can beat Missouri here. As good as Missouri has looked at times, they're a very inconsistent team. Meanwhile, Drake is coached by Ben McCollum, one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. They just know how to win. They're a very steady group. They can slow the game down against a Missouri team that likes to play fast at times. I think I'm going to take Drake here. I really trust them. I think they're ready for this moment. I think that they're going to be very well prepared, and I like betting on those well-prepared mid-major teams, especially when Missouri isn't like the biggest or most athletic high-major team. And then I'm going to take Texas Tech over UNC Wilmington. I just don't see the upset here. I'm going to take Arkansas over Kansas just because I do not trust Kansas at all. They are one of those teams right now where you just can't pay me to pick them. They've gone whooped a lot of times. I just don't think that this group is one of Bill Self's best. Meanwhile, Arkansas has been playing some good basketball down the stretch. They're very talented. I think John Calipari is hungry in this tournament after the way he went out at Kentucky. So I'm going to take Arkansas there. And then come on now. We've got to take Rick Pitino and the Johnnies to beat Omaha, advance to the second round. So now we get into the left side of the bracket, and I've already taken Duke over American. In the 8-9 matchup, this is such a coin toss. I don't really like either of these teams, but I guess I'll take Baylor. You know, Scott Drew, they've got a good offense. I think they can pull that one out. Oregon is one of those teams that's just absolutely money when it comes tournament time. Every single year, Dana Altman always has his guys getting the job done. I mean, they're just money, man. They're absolute money. I'm not taking them to lose to Liberty in the first round. I'm not going to do it. Meanwhile, I would say Arizona is kind of the opposite. Every year I sell myself on Arizona just because they're a really fun offense. You know, they got a ton of athleticism. I cannot tell you how many times Arizona has broken my heart in the tournament. I feel like against a good mid-major like Akron that plays super fast, a really fun offense, this is my opportunity to learn my lessons from the past. I'm not taking Arizona. I'm not taking Arizona. Give me Akron as my first really big upset as a 13 seed. They've got a really good offense, and that can get it done against a vulnerable Arizona team that just never really seems prepared for those close games in March. It's just happened too many times for my liking. I'm not doing it. BYU versus VCU. I think both of these teams are really good and maybe a little bit underseeded, but I think BYU is not very good defensively, and I think that VCU is an especially underseeded team. You know, they are one of the very best mid-majors in the country. They won a ton of games this year. They were very competitive in the non-conference, and I like VCU. If I'm going to take an 11 over 6, this is one I really like, even though BYU is a good team themselves. I'm riding with the Rams, home of the absolute legend Mo Alley-Cox. If you know, you know, one of the best players to ever do it. And then we got Wisconsin and Montana. I'm not taking an upset there. Give me Wisconsin. As much as I hate St. Mary's and their brand of basketball, they're so boring. They're so slow. I don't really like Vanderbilt. I just don't really think they're going to have a good time scoring the basketball on an elite team like St. Mary's defensively. So I'm taking St. Mary's. And then I'm going to take Alabama over Robert Morris. In the Midwest, I'm definitely taking Gonzaga over Georgia just because Gonzaga is like the most underseeded team in the bracket, probably based on how they are analytically. Like KenPom has them as a top 10 team in the nation. I just can't fade the numbers at a certain point, you know. I'm taking Gonzaga in that 8-9. I feel pretty good about my 8-9 picks besides the Baylor Mississippi State one. And, you know, everyone loves McNeese State, especially this year with the GOAT, Amir Khan. You know, they've got all the aura going for them. But I don't know if this McNeese team is really that great. I don't know if they have that star player that can really get buckets for them on offense. And, you know, this Clemson team showed us last year that they're just really steady and balanced. And they had a great year, I would say. Even though they were in the bad ACC. You know, they beat a team like Duke at home. I just don't see the upset happening here. I'm going to take Clemson over McNeese. McNeese got me last year. I was all aboard the train, and I'm not doing it again. That's a common theme for me this year. I am not playing around with stuff that has killed me in the past. We're going to flip the course, and we're going to live with the results of that, all right? But I'll tell you, I really like the upset here. I'm going to take High Point over Purdue. I'm going to take my second 13 seed to do it because this High Point team absolutely rocks. They're another one of those up-tempo offensive juggernauts. And, you know, they might be a little bit undersized, but I just don't think this Purdue team is very good defensively. And they don't have that freak like Zach Edey down low to just absolutely torch a mid-major. So I'm going to take High Point in the first round. I'm riding the wave there. And I'm going to take another double-digit seed here because usually there's going to be that first four team that wins in the first four and then they end up winning in the first round. We always seem to see these 11 seeds get there, and, you know, I kind of like Texas and Xavier. I wasn't sure if they were going to let Texas in just because they lost so many games, but that is a team very capable of winning games in this tournament. With Trey Johnson, they've got a lot of talent, and, you know, Xavier also has Ryan Conwell, so I'm not the highest on Illinois either. They've been shaky throughout the year. This is one that I feel good picking. I'm going to take the winner of that playing game. And then I'm taking Kentucky over Troy. You know, some people might think Kentucky gets upset again because that's just the way it's been, but it's a different coach now. Mark Pope is going to have his guys ready, and I don't think that Troy is that awesome. So, UCLA, Utah State, I'm fading the Mountain West, guys. The only team I'm going to take is Colorado State in the Mountain West. Unfortunately, I love them. I would love to see the Mountain West succeed, but we just got to be realistic here. I think UCLA is going to win that one, and we're taking Tennessee over Wofford to round out the first round. Now we get into the second round, and I'm kicking things off with a bang. I think that we are going to see the biggest upset of the tournament so far here. Our first #1 seed goes out. Louisville upsets Auburn in Lexington, and that's a big factor for me. I think Auburn kind of got screwed having to play in this specific area because I think both of these teams, Louisville and Creighton, are both really good, and I just don't really trust Auburn when it comes to any one of the one seeds. I think that they could have a bit of a meltdown. As talented as they are, they don't really play that together. They've got a lot of egos, a lot of guys trying to get their own, and I think that Pat Kelsey is also a better coach than Bruce Pearl. I think that he will have his guys ready. I think that Louisville could be one of the very fun stories of the tournament as just an overall turnaround from the Kenny Payne era. So I'm going to take Louisville, and I could very well see if Creighton wins this game, I would also pick them as well. You know, there's got to be a one seed that goes out early, and for me, I trust Auburn the least out of all these one seeds. Even though they looked like they were the best one throughout the year, they've had not a meltdown, but a losing streak down the stretch, and they've definitely showed their flaws, and I just don't know if they're going to be that stable going into this tournament. And then we've got Michigan versus Texas A&M. I will actually be in Denver for the second round matchups, and I'm really hoping that A&M can get past Yale so I can go and watch them in this one. And come on, guys. You know, I'd said that I'm not super high on either of these teams, being completely honest. But I could see UC San Diego beating Michigan in the first place. So I'm going to ride with the Aggies. We're going to take them another time. I think Texas A&M gets to the Sweet 16 just because they're a very tenacious defense. Michigan has those turnover problems. A&M has size down low to match them. I think they could win that one. I think they could. And, you know, I don't really love either of these teams. I guess I'll pick Iowa State. I don't really like Marquette either. I'm going to take Michigan State. I'm not a big fan of the South region as a whole. I think it's definitely the worst one in the bracket. So moving on to the West here, you know, I think a lot of people probably were going into this one thinking that they could pick UConn to make a run just because, you know, Dan Hurley, the two-time defending champs, they're always going to be dangerous. But this Florida team is so loaded, and UConn isn't that great defensively. I could see Florida hanging like 90 on them. Like, I really could. I'm going to take Florida there. And I am definitely taking Maryland over Colorado State. Like I said, I'm not trusting the Mountain West. I really do not like either of these teams, and I really do like Maryland, man. I think they're a lock for the Sweet 16. Mark my words. And, you know, I like Drake. I think they can get one here. But ultimately, I don't know if they have the offensive firepower to keep up with a team like Texas Tech. Texas Tech is so good, man. I'm going to take them to the Sweet 16. And I'm tempted to take Arkansas here, man. This is a really fun matchup between John Calipari and Rick Pitino. Just classic stuff. And I'm not huge on the St. John's team because I don't really like their offense, but it is a little underrated, I think. I've watched St. John's down the stretch. They're finding ways to score the basketball. I think they can get to the Sweet 16, especially in Providence. I think they're going to have a great crowd there. It's going to be electric. So moving on to the East region, second round, I am definitely taking Duke over Baylor. I'm just not inspired by either of those teams. I think Duke is a lock for the Sweet 16. And, you know, I picked Akron to beat Arizona. That's a fun instance where I think Akron's a really fun team, and I don't trust Arizona. But like I said, Oregon is money come tournament time. Dana Altman, Oregon to the Sweet 16. And I do like this VCU team. I really do. I think that VCU can play with just about anyone in this tournament. But I also really, really like Wisconsin. I really like Wisconsin, man. I'm on them after watching them in the Big Ten tournament. Just a really good offense that gets a lot of good looks. They can get to the line. Very stable group led by John Tonji. So I'm going to take Wisconsin to the Sweet 16, and I'm definitely not taking St. Mary's over Alabama. That's just like the biggest mismatch in terms of athleticism. So yeah, that'll do it for my second round in the East region. Pretty self-explanatory. In the Midwest, you know, I think some people are going to take Gonzaga just because they are very underseeded. But I'm telling you guys, this Houston team is amazing. They're still an elite defense. This is Kelvin Sampson's best shooting team he's probably ever had. We're going to take Clemson over High Point. You know, I love having fun in the first round, but I'm just not really going to trust some of these smaller mid-majors to string together 2 consecutive wins, especially against a team as stout as Clemson, man. I trust them, even though they're coming out of the ACC. I'm putting some stock in the ACC being a little bit underrated, at least with their top teams, all right? And then I'm going to take an upset here, though. I am going to take the play-in-game winner between Texas and Xavier to get to the Sweet 16. You know, like I said, there's going to be a double-digit seed that makes it to this far, and a lot of times they'll come out of that first 4 matchup, and I don't really trust Kentucky. It's not a Mark Pope thing. I just think that they're kind of depleted right now, and they're not very good defensively. They haven't been playing great basketball as of late. So I've just got a feeling about this one, man. I just have a feeling that Texas or Xavier could string together some quality performances, especially Texas, man. They already beat Kentucky pretty recently, so I feel good about that one as my double-digit Sweet 16 team. And then I'm going to take UCLA to lose to Tennessee. I think Tennessee is rock solid, man. So good defensively. So that'll do it for our second round. And now we get to the second weekend. So we got the South games. These are going to be in Atlanta. And, you know, like I said, I'm not that high on my Aggies. You know, I would love to see them get farther here. I think that Auburn going out, you know, I don't know if necessarily facing Auburn is the worst thing considering they just beat them. But I think this is a solid opportunity for A&M. But I'm going to take Louisville. You know, you've got to have a bold team in the Elite Eight. Like I said, every round there's got to be someone that shouldn't make it that you have making it, or else your bracket is just not going to be perfect. And we're shooting for perfection here. We're not just going to take chalk and hope to be pretty good. We're shooting for perfection. That's the standard here at Elite Takes. So I'm going to take Louisville. Man, the vibes are there. The vibes are there. Pat Kelsey, great coach, balanced team, good offense, good defense. And I like their path. I really do. I think especially in terms of locations, they could have some really nice crowds going for them. And I just don't really love this Iowa State team. I think that Michigan State can beat them. You know, it's Izzo. It's Tom Izzo. I think that Michigan State is going to be ready for that one. They can match Iowa's physicality. They're good defensively themselves. So I'm going to take them there. In the East region, we're just going to go top to bottom instead of left to right. I'm going to take Duke over Oregon. I like this Oregon team. I don't know if they could pull off this kind of upset, though. Duke is absolutely loaded. Cooper Flagg and company get to the Elite Eight, but I'm going to take Wisconsin over Alabama. You know, I really like this Wisconsin team. I really do. I think that they're going to make a lot of threes. They're going to overwhelm another team on the perimeter. And you can say that Alabama is going to do that too, but I would say Alabama is just a little bit inconsistent. And, you know, I've got to go bold somewhere. You know, I've got to have some of these non-chalk seeds in the Elite Eight. We're going to have some fun around here. Even though it might not make perfect sense on paper, we're going to have some fun around here. So we've got some classic matchups here, ones that we've seen before. This is just like 2015 all over again. So now we go down to the bottom side of the bracket, and as much as I like Maryland, this is just unfortunate for them because Florida, Maryland doesn't have that much depth. You know, they've got a great starting five. Florida also has a great starting five and a little bit more depth, and they're just a little bit better. So I think Florida will take that one. And, you know, a lot of people are going to bet on St. John's. This is where I'm going to say that their offense holds them back a bit against a team like Texas Tech that can really, really put up points. I think that Rick Pitino squad goes out there. We got Florida, Texas Tech in the Elite Eight. That's a great matchup. I was really, really hoping that we could get these two teams in separate regions because I would have very easily taken Tech and Florida to make the Final Four. So it's unfortunate they have to meet there. And, you know, we're going to take in the Midwest, we're rolling with the Cougs. You know, I like Clemson, but I just think that Houston is such a safe bet to make a big run in this tournament. I think this is where that run ends for the play-in team. I'm going to assume it's Texas. I think it could be Xavier, though. We've got a really, really physical matchup setting up there between Houston and Tennessee. But we'll go to the top of the bracket first for the Elite Eight. In the Elite Eight, Louisville, Michigan State, you know, I can't pick this Louisville team any longer considering they are in the first game of the tournament. And if they lose that game, I don't want my bracket to be completely screwed. You know, at least I can cope and say that my Final Four is still intact if they lose. I'm going to take Michigan State just because I don't love any of the teams in the region. So you might as well pick the coach that you trust the most, and that's Tom Izzo. And you know that their defense is going to be good enough to keep them in every game. I just can't do the Louisville thing any longer. And, you know, this Duke team is so loaded, man, from Cooper Flagg, Concanupal, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but they're just absolutely loaded. They've got seniority and a lot of freshman firepower, but I can't pick a bunch of one seeds. I like this Wisconsin team. I really do. Wisconsin is one of my sleepers. They're just really, really, really solid, man. And I'll go out on a limb there and say that Wisconsin gets it done, and we get multiple Big Ten teams in the Final Four. Don't feel great about that, but like I said, not all the one seeds are going to make it. I will bet that Duke and Auburn don't. So, going down here in the Elite Eight, Florida, Texas Tech, a really great matchup. But I just think that Florida maybe has a little bit more size and even more offensive firepower than Texas Tech. We're going to take them. It's unfortunate, though, because I really would have loved to put Texas Tech in the Final Four, maybe even a little bit more than Wisconsin as that 3 seed. And, you know, between Houston and Tennessee, I think that Houston is just like the better version of Tennessee here. Two defensive-minded teams, but Houston just has a little bit more to work through offensively, in my opinion, even though Chaz Lanier is an absolute stud. I saw it firsthand as an A&M fan. He torched us. So, our Final Four is going to be Florida, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Houston. I feel good about Houston and Florida. I really do. I think that those two teams, I'm very confident that they're going to make it out of their regions. And, you know, I just have a bad feeling about Auburn. I think Michigan State's really solid. And I think that Wisconsin is my boldest Final Four pick coming out of the East because that's a tough region. And it's going to be really tough for them to beat Alabama and Duke. But I'll go out on a limb there. And, you know, in San Antonio, we've got to take Houston to make it to the championship game. I think that Houston can really defend Wisconsin quite well, and they're going to have that crowd going for them. You know, they had a great crowd last time they made it to San Antonio. Would be really cool. I have Houston in the national championship game, and I've got Florida in the national championship game because I just think their offense is levels ahead of Michigan State. You know, Listen, guys, I just have a very, very strong feeling that this is going to be the national championship game. I have a very strong feeling, especially when I saw these two teams' draws. Florida and Houston, man. These teams are absolutely elite. They're super balanced. You know, Florida is just amazing offensively with Walter Clayton and Will Richard and, you know, Elijah Martin, and they've got those skilled bigs. You know, they don't have the craziest path. Meanwhile, Houston has that seniority with guys like Jawan Roberts and, you know, Kelvin Sampson's crews are so great defensively. Cryer, Milos Uzan, they're just loaded. This is the year. This is the year where Houston avoids the injuries and makes it all the way, especially with this home court advantage going for them in San Antonio. I think Kelvin Sampson would love to ride into the sunset and retire off of this. But I'll be honest with you guys. I decided a couple weeks ago that I really think Florida is the best team in college basketball, just because they have so much going for them. It's really hard to find a flaw because they have the size on top of the offensive firepower in the backcourt, and they've got a lot of experience as well. You know, Walter Clay and Elijah Martin, they've been here before. I think Florida's going to win the national championship, especially after watching them in the SEC tournament, one of the greatest conferences of all time. They ran through that tournament with relative ease. And as much as I really do think this is the year for Houston to make their huge run because they are one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country, finally on top of their defensive mentality that's been so great for so long, I think that this is Florida's year. I have them winning the national championship over Houston. I have a very, very strong feeling about this one. We'll submit the bracket. All right, here. My pick to cut down the nets is Florida. My Final Four is Florida, Michigan State, Houston, and Wisconsin. I had a lot of fun with this. I'm really excited to see how this one goes, but I really do have a lot of faith when it gets down to it that I'm going to be right here. If you watched this video all the way through, thank you so much. I know this is not my regular NFL content, but I love March Madness so much, and I felt like this would be a great time to have some fun and break down my whole bracket here on YouTube. Get it out early, you know, make sure that I'm not overthinking through the rest of the week. If you're new here, make sure to like, subscribe, and also comment what your bracket is looking like. I would love to hear all about it. But with that said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time.